So, is Miraculous kind of sexist to anybody else? Like, yeah, just a general question. And my goodness, I know, this is already a bit of a spicy question to ask, and probably a spicy opinion to hold. I kind of think it is, or at least I think it sort of is in some regards. Now, obviously, the intention behind the show itself is largely uplifting and an inspiring girl power type of story, where Marinette slash Ladybug is the main hero of the tale. Don't let the title fool you. This is not the Tales of Cat Noir. It's the Tales of Ladybug. Nobody's shortening the title to Miraculous Cat Noir, are they? They shorten it to Miraculous Ladybug. She's the main character, and that's all you need to know, really. It's simply how the show's framed. And on the surface, I think it actually does send quite an empowering message, right? That the hero doesn't always need to be a man. That girls can be independent and strong and can lead, and they get the job done for themselves. And through the vessel of Marinette, we do see this play out on screen. When we first meet her, she's rather meek and scared and just not a very heroic or exciting character, or at least that's what she's like at the start of the timeline, when you put those episodes in chronological order. But after she's chosen by Master Fu to become the next wielder of the Miraculous, all because of her selfless kindness, she begins to develop far more as a character. She becomes self-confident, a self-assured hero. She leads the duo to victory many times. She's not the damsel in distress. She's not some weakling that can't do anything right. She's the one that in the overwhelming majority of episodes comes up with the winning strategy that defeats the villain and gets the Akuma. And also, in the majority of the episodes, she's also just straight up the person that does the most work within the winning strategy, whilst Cat Noir kind of awkwardly shuffles off to the side or gets defeated. You know, as is tradition. On top of that, over the course of the show, it's Marinette that's chosen to be trained by Fu and set up to be the future Guardian to replace him at the end of Season 3. And it's her that leads the team of heroes. She's in charge. She's trusted to know all of the identities except for Cat Noir's and hand out the Miraculouses to whom she will. And really, she's just the main leader in the effort to defeat Hawkmoth or Shadowmoth or Monarch, whatever you want to call him. Old Smooth Brain Gabe himself. And so yeah, in that regard, I do think the show was a bit of a breath of fresh air. A new era, so to speak. A bit more progressive than some shows have been in the past, but that's just the obvious thing, right? Oh yes, the girl is the main hero. It's a step in the right direction, but at the same time, the show, for me at least, still comes across as really sus when you compare it to a bunch of other shows of this era, and indeed, past eras. And there are a few ways in which I've noticed this, but for starters, we can start with the hyperfixation on romance, or rather, the hyperfixation of the story to have all the main lead girls just thirst over this one dude, driving most of the drama and the story development. And this is pretty much the exclusion of all else. And so yes, I'm talking about the thirst for Adrien. Because when you think about Marinette, what is the main goal in her life that comes to mind, that you see across all of the seasons of the show? And if you've not said managed to win Adrien's heart, then I'm sorry, you are the weakest link, goodbye. Pretty much every episode you'll ever see, you'll have this force its way into the story in some regard, and it never really changes. Even when she dates Luca, it's very brief, and then she's just back at it again. Her whole identity changes. She goes from the self-assured leader of her friend group to a complete creepazoid. And with the flip of a coin, pretty much her whole identity revolves around this one dude. And if you strip it away, she no longer has any real story beyond fighting Gabe, which is not enough, if you ask me, for a well-rounded character, let alone your protagonist. Even her interactions with her friends over time largely become coloured by this obsession. All of their schemes and their discussions to try and get her in with Adrien. It's fine for a sometimes storyline, as I know real friendships do have these sort of discussions, but it's such a dominant force in the story that I do think it actually actively harms Marinette as a character, or at least it did in early seasons especially. It makes her whole arc dependent on this one guy, which doesn't feel very progressive to me. I mean, I'm not against romance, and I do think it has a place in the story, but the way it's framed is just very odd to me. I mean, it even spills over into a number of the other main characters and their relationships with Marinette, our main hero. Take Lila, for example. She's pretty much being set up as the main villain of the show's next big saga. She's replacing Gabe, and she's getting her hands on the Miraculous of the Butterfly. And so clearly she needed a reason to go up against Marinette. It just makes sense to have them at odds, right? To build up this rivalry whilst you can, before Lila goes off to be Hawkmoth and kind of has to be in the shadows by necessity. And how is it, do you think, they built up this grand rivalry? How do you think they did it? That's right, they had Marinette get massively and irrationally jealous at Lila trying to crack onto Adrien. That's how. That is the entire story of why they hate each other. What will turn out to be a multi-season clash between these two characters, boils down into an attempted tug of war over Adrian's affections, which, I don't know, it kind of worked at first until it basically just consumed their whole storyline, even beyond the point of reason. Because after Adrian has given Lila the proverbial middle finger, she's still trying to manipulate her way in to getting with this dude. She pretty much swears a blood feud against Marinette for all time because she was cock-blocked that one time. Like, she straight up tries to ruin this girl's life. Same with Chloe. Yeah, there's the pre-built history with Chloe and Marinette, but the reality that in practice, many of their conflicts simply boil down to jealousy and competition about a boy. Even late into the game where, once again, Adrian has told Chloe where to shove it, she's still trying to get in. She's still trying to manipulate him to get him away from Marinette, and I don't know. I do think it makes them seem like weaker characters. It feels lazy and contrived and falling into a lot of those old tropes that we probably want to get away from. I mean, I don't think they're overtly trying to be sexist or misogynistic or anything like that, but it certainly seems quite regressive to have so many of the prominent female cast members, your main protagonist, two of your major antagonists. Hell, Kagami's whole vibe was about Adrian, and then she switches to Felix, who conveniently looks exactly like Adrian. But yeah, they become rabid dogs when they're confronted with this handsome boy. They lose all sense of character, and they fight it out. A bunch of animals trying to get the last link of sausages. It's especially hard to take Marinette, your main protagonist, seriously as a result of all this. Her thirsty shenanigans go way too far, and it becomes weird. And the problem is, it's not a reciprocal thing. Take a look at Adrian and his storyline. Yes, obviously there's still the obsession with Ladybug and all of that, but it's not in the same way. It's much reduced. And it doesn't define his relationships with pretty much every other character, because there are major facets to his story and personality and interpersonal relationships that develop independently of Ladybug, like his friendships with the various side characters. Kagami, Luca, Nino, his bond with Plagg, Natalie being a surrogate mother for him, his stormy and abusive relationship with Gabe and all that entails. Hell, even the development of his relationship with Marinette, because, like I said, that's a new thing. He doesn't know that Marinette's Ladybug, so it's a different relationship. And that for him, from his point of view, develops naturally and healthily. And only after that does that all twist together. His story develops into it. It's not the only facet of his personality. That is so much depth. He's a character that does not live solely to play out his obsession with his romantic interest. And instead, he has much more of a life and personality outside of that. It's just the difference in the way that the story deals with both their arcs that I do find really astounding and really regressive. Oh, and on top of that, can I remind anybody how they frame the rejection of Cat Noir by Ladybug over and over again? How that's treated by the story? It's treated as a massive negative. Plagg yells at Ladybug about it, saying that she should be grateful for having someone love her so much. There's sad music playing over and over again every time he's rejected and he gets sad. Cat Noir gets angsty. Ladybug apologizes for hurting his feelings. Imagine that. The rejected man who can't accept a no is treated by the narrative, by the story, by the writers as the victim. Whilst the woman who does the right thing and tells him no and won't accept his romantic affection, and all the while makes it very clear to him that she's not trying to lead him on, before exercising her right to feel safe and avoid his overly creepy ways, is considered to be a shrew, to be cruel, a heartbreaker. Whew. That's straight out of the Nice Guys subreddit, eh? But that's not all, and I would argue that this next one is probably the worst of it. It's how the show frames the arcs of its villains, and the different way it wants you to view villainous male characters versus villainous female characters. Look, Gabe's a massive piece of shit, and you can't possibly try to deny that fact. It's just how it is. He abuses his son and random other children and really anyone, and is willing to sacrifice everybody in the world and anything in the world in pursuit of his selfish desire of bringing his wife back to life. Even though, well, real talk, let's be honest, she played with fire, she got burned. That was the price she paid to have a kid. Too bad. And it was one that she actually seemed to have long since accepted. So he goes against her dying wishes, and he does heinous shit to her only child, but at the last second he changes his mind and decides to be a good person. Like, he gets a literal last-second redemption, and then he's remembered as a tragic hero. What? He's a piece of trash, but the show is framing him as a hero at the end. What? Next up, look at Andre. He's also up there for worst father in the franchise. He bows down to the every whim of his abusive and narcissistic wife, allowing his daughter to become just as twisted. And indeed, he engages in a shit ton of shady and corrupt dealings himself. And at the end of all of that, he ditches his daughter, whom he mostly raised himself, and considers her a lost cause, with the show suddenly painting this dude as a victim and a hero for letting Chloe have it, for tearing her apart verbally and abandoning her to be raised by his wife, his truly terrible, horrible, abusive wife. Sure, yeah, I guess he's a hero then, isn't he? So now we have two undeserved, I'd argue, redemption arcs for the major male antagonists. And hell, just another comparison, Felix. In his intro, does he not assault Marinette? Or at least harass her quite badly? That ain't good. And he slaughters the entire planet because he has daddy issues and existential issues. But at no point beyond that brief intro do I think the story ever really frames him as a villain. No, he's an anti-hero. A bit of a badass who, yeah, he makes some mistakes, but it's all good because he's a soft boy at heart and he gets shit done. Come on now. But what about the ladies? What do they get? Any redemption in sight? Well, we have Natalie, and she does get a pretty good redemption arc. This one that actually feels the most earned, because she doesn't just suddenly get the redemption arc out of nowhere. She gets sick trying to help Gabe, because I think on one hand she loves him, 2, on one hand she was very close to Emily, and 3, she loves Adrian so much and wants him to have his mother back. But then she gets sick, she sees Gabe's going crazy and that he's abusing Adrian way too hard, and so she tries to change things. Decent enough. Well written, I think. But then, who are our other female villains? 3 truly terrible characters who show no remorse at all, no goodness. And by the end, there's no real positive qualities. We're talking Chloe, we're talking Lila, we're talking Audrey. Audrey, especially, is blamed for everything that Andre has ever done. Obviously, she must have lured the poor innocent man in with her terrible womanly wiles and corrupted him, making him give up on his filmmaking dreams to become a businessman and a politician. It reads like some made-up red pill Reddit storyline. On top of that, she has an affair baby, whom Saint Andre adopts at the end, out of nowhere. Yikes. So she's just the worst piece of shitty trash. A terrible woman, the worst one imaginable. No redemption, no remorse, no positive qualities at all. Just rage and hate and cruelty. And he is our little cream puff sweetheart who was led astray by the power of snoo snoo. Cringe. And then there's Lila, who's being set up to be the next big villain to replace Gabe. And I would be very shocked, based on the trajectory of her character, if she ever gets the same treatment as Gabe, where the writers try to make you understand the point of view that she has, and then give a bit of a positive spin on them from time to time, like Gabe and his pancakes arc, and the fact that he really does love his wife and does love his son to some extent. And then we move on to the arc of Chloe, who develops over the early seasons into a sort of hero, only to regress and regress really hard and become even worse than she ever was before. And then on top of that, they add new flashback episodes that paint her as even worse than she was in season 1 through 3. So she goes from entitled bully to raging asshole, Audrey Jr. in every single way. Her sympathetic relationship with her abusive mum, it's washed away, because now she's simply always been an awful person. And then she gets that extreme cosmic punishment from on high as she loses everything. Her only friends, her home, her father's love, all of it. Feels like the writers are getting some sort of sick gratification out of writing the breakdown of a teenage girl. It's a yikes from me, dog. But no, I very much doubt they're going to give her the last second redemption where she apologizes and realizes she was wrong. She's going to go down with no regrets. The only reason she might be remorseful is that she didn't manage to destroy Marinette's life. And that's not to mention Kagami's mum, who seems good for now, right? Oh, she's had a redemption, but she's doing all this good stuff. Nah. She came across as really terrible in the show, and it's very obvious she's being set up to do some more terrible shit once the story continues. Her out-of-the-blue change of heart very much feels like bullshit, and I doubt there's going to be the same level of sympathy that's applied to her story as Gabe's either. I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm not convinced. I mean, yeah, it's not necessarily bad writing, right? It's pretty generic in 2D at times, but it wouldn't bother me if it was consistent. If Gabe and Andre and Felix, they were all treated as badly as these ladies are. But they aren't. They get to change. They get people to trust them. They get people to believe in them. Whereas the opposite is not true for the female characters. And to me, it just plays into so many bad tropes that I do not think have a place in a show that aims to empower young girls. E.g., that abusive men, which all 3 of these guys are to some extent, can be fixed or are misunderstood and need guidance and can earn redemption, because under it all, they're just soft boys who need love. Yikes, no thanks. And meanwhile, bad women They're the source of all evil. We need to burn them at the stake. We need to see their lives fall apart in great detail. We need the karmic justice to slap these bitches in the face. No mercy, no forgiveness. Yikes, 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 red flags everywhere. No thank you. And so yeah, that's all I've got for you today. So with all that being said, I think I'll leave things here and say these have been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about all this? Do you agree with me? Disagree? Am I reading too much into things? I'm really curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.